The palace walls had ears, but she had better ones. Before she became a queen, she had been observant, quiet, patient. In the vast marble corridors of the imperial court, survival depended not on beauty or charm, but on knowing when to listen. And she listened. The empire was powerful, stretching across continents. Its armies feared, its banners respected. But inside the palace, power was more fragile than glass. Whispers traveled behind silk curtains. Alliances shifted with a single dinner invitation. One wrong word could mean exile or death. She had married the Sultan at a young age, not for love but for stability. Her family had been influential. The marriage secured loyalty from a powerful faction of the court. At first, she played her role perfectly, graceful in public, silent in council, dutiful beside the throne. But she paid attention. She noticed which ministers lingered too long after meetings, which generals avoided eye contact, which letters were burned instead of archived. One evening, while passing through a dim corridor near the treasury chambers, she overheard something she was never meant to hear. Two senior officials whispering urgently. The Janissaries will not wait much longer. The Sultan does not yet suspect. Her footsteps froze. Rebellion? Inside the palace? She did not move. She did not breathe. The conversation revealed plans, not just dissatisfaction but strategy. Names were mentioned, dates hinted, coordinated uprising. And worst of all, someone close to the throne was involved. She returned to her chambers shaken. This was not rumor. This was treason. But telling the Sultan carried risk. If she accused powerful men and lacked proof, she would make enemies. If she stayed silent, the empire might fracture. For days she watched carefully. She began connecting patterns, sudden troop movements, unusual meetings, coded correspondence. She knew too much, and someone realized she knew, and someone realized she knew. The first warning came subtly. Her personal maid was replaced. Then 2 trusted guards were reassigned. Doors once open to her were now politely closed. The palace had shifted. She was being watched. And the Sultan, the man she shared a throne with, seemed distant, distracted, influenced. The realization struck her slowly. The conspiracy was closer to the throne than she feared. Much closer. And in the Ottoman court, knowing too much was more dangerous than speaking too loudly. The arrest came at night.
No announcement. No explanation.
For imperial guards entered her chamber while lanterns flickered against marble walls. By order of the Sultan. Those words cut deeper than any blade. She demanded to see him. She was denied. Accused of political manipulation, of spreading instability, of contacting foreign envoys without approval. Fabricated charges, cleverly structured. The irony was unbearable. The woman who uncovered treason was now accused of it. She was escorted through corridors she once ruled beside her husband. Servants avoided eye contact. No one intervened. In the Ottoman palace system, perception mattered more than truth. If the Sultan believed she was a threat, then she was one. She was taken not to a public prison, but to a secluded tower within the palace complex. Luxurious, guarded, isolated. Not a dungeon, a gilded cage. Officially, she was resting due to illness. Unofficially, she had been removed from power. Days passed without news. No visitors. No letters. Silence can be louder than chains. Finally, the Sultan came. Alone. He looked older. Tired. There are rumors, he said quietly. Dangerous ones. She told him everything she had heard. The whispers. The plans. The names. His expression did not change. But something in his eyes hardened. Those men are loyal, he replied. Or perhaps he needed to believe they were. Because if she was right, it meant betrayal sat at his own council table. Trust is fragile in a palace built on ambition. He left without giving her freedom. And she understood then. The conspiracy had reached him first. Imprisonment inside a palace is different from chains in a dungeon. It is quiet, controlled, invisible. She had silk cushions, books, food brought regularly. But every door was locked. every window guarded. She began reconstructing events in her mind. Who benefited most from her removal? Which ministers gained influence? Which advisors now stood closer to the Sultan? Patterns emerged. The Grand Vizier's sudden authority expansion, the increased presence of certain military commanders, and the tightening restrictions on palace communication. She realized something chilling. The coup was not meant to overthrow the Sultan. It was meant to control him, by isolating him from dissenting voices, by eliminating those who questioned too much, including her. From her tower window, she could see the city beyond the palace walls. Markets alive, ships in the harbor, an empire functioning normally. No one knew their queen was imprisoned. That was the brilliance of it. No public scandal. No unrest. Just quiet removal. But she was not broken. She memorized guard rotations, observed servant routines, watched which officials entered private meetings late at night. Knowledge had put her here, and knowledge might free her. Months later, tension finally surfaced. The Janissaries grew restless. Delayed payments, conflicting orders, murmurs spread through the barracks. The Sultan began receiving reports that contradicted his advisors' reassurances. Small inconsistencies, minor rebellions in distant provinces. The empire was shifting, and the men who promised stability were losing control. One evening, a loyal court eunuch, one of the few untouched by faction politics, secretly brought her news. The Grand Vizier had begun consolidating military power. Private meetings, secret correspondences, exactly as she had warned. The Sultan at last began to doubt. He visited her again, this time without pride. "You were right," he admitted quietly. But restoring her would expose his weakness. Releasing her publicly would confirm internal fracture. He faced a choice: protect his image, or protect his throne. She offered a solution: a quiet investigation, strategic removals, controlled exposure of treason. No public chaos. He listened, and for the first time since her imprisonment, he trusted her. The purge was swift. Discreet arrests, sudden dismissals, exile disguised as promotion to distant provinces. The Grand Vizier disappeared from court within weeks. Officially retired, unofficially neutralized. Stability returned. The Janissaries calmed. The empire steadied. And the queen was quietly reinstated.
No announcement. No apology.
Just a gradual reappearance beside the throne. But something had changed. She had learned a truth deeper than palace intrigue. Power in the Ottoman court was never shared. It was borrowed. Even as queen, she stood one whisper away from confinement again. She had saved the Sultan, saved the throne, saved the empire from internal collapse. Yet her own position remained fragile, because she still knew too much. In the palace of silk and marble, knowledge was both weapon and curse, and she would always walk the thin line between influence and imprisonment. The Sultan's prisoner queen, locked away not for betrayal, but for understanding the game too clearly. And in empires built on ambition, clarity is the most dangerous power of all. Power had returned to her, but peace had not. The palace corridors felt different now. Quieter, careful. Every smile she received seemed measured. Every bow calculated. She had been imprisoned once. That memory would never disappear from the marble walls. The Sultan trusted her again, but trust inside imperial courts is never permanent. It shifts with influence, with rumors, with fear. And fear was growing again. The purge had removed the Grand Vizier and his closest allies. But conspiracies are rarely built by one man alone. They are networks, roots underground, invisible until they spread too far. One evening, as she reviewed provincial reports beside the Sultan, she noticed something unsettling. Supply delays, minor troop relocations, small administrative errors. Nothing dramatic, but familiar. The pattern was returning. Someone else had stepped into the space left behind. She realized a painful truth. Removing one threat does not end palace politics. It only creates a vacancy. That night, She walked alone through the inner courtyard under moonlight. The fountain water echoed softly against stone. Once she had feared losing power. Now she feared holding it, because holding power meant visibility, and visibility meant vulnerability. A trusted eunuch approached quietly. "My queen." There are whispers among the younger commanders. She did not react. She had trained herself not to show surprise. Whispers of what? That the Sultan grows dependent. Dependent. The word was deliberate, dangerous. If rivals could convince the court that she controlled him, resentment would grow. And resentment in an imperial system often led to violent correction. The Sultan ruled an empire of warriors. Perception of weakness could spark rebellion faster than injustice. She understood now why rulers sometimes chose cruelty. Fear stabilizes, but it also isolates. She made a decision that would redefine her legacy. She began withdrawing from visible influence. Fewer public councils, more private advisement, strategic silence. If she appeared less dominant, she would become less threatening. But silence came at a cost. Her voice, once powerful, now had to operate in shadows. And shadows are unpredictable places. Weeks later, an incident shook the palace. A junior commander publicly criticized a recent decree, subtly implying that foreign influence clouded imperial judgment. The court froze. It was not open rebellion, but it was a test. The Sultan reacted swiftly, stripping the commander of rank. Too swiftly, too harshly, and once again, murmurs spread. That night, she confronted him privately. "You cannot punish every doubt," she said calmly. "It makes doubt grow stronger." He looked exhausted. "You saved me once. Now they say you rule me." She held his gaze. "I never ruled you." But perception rarely cares about truth. In that moment, they both understood something neither had spoken before. Her intelligence had protected the empire, but it had also altered the balance of power permanently. She could never return to being only a ceremonial queen, and he could never fully separate love, loyalty, and political necessity. The palace had not forgotten her imprisonment, nor had she, and deep inside the empire's glittering heart, a silent rule remained. The one who understands the system best will always be feared by it. Part 6 ends not with resolution, but with tension, because survival in the Ottoman court was not about winning once. It was about surviving every day after.